Health System cardiologist Dr. Irving Schwartz says a cardiac arrest is when your heart either stops or goes out of rhythm, which will cause sudden loss of consciousness. He says the most common cause is an irregular heartbeat. Schwartz says an injury to the heart, like a punch, can also lead to a cardiac arrest. Meanwhile, he says there are certain qualities that make someone prone to heart issues.
Those that we identify at risk for it, and those might be people who have had previous heart damage or had an event like that and survived it, or have a weakened heart for some reason, we're putting what's called implantable defibrillators in them.
And Schwartz says high blood pressure, high cholesterol, tobacco intake, and diabetes can lead to heart problems. He also says getting older can play a factor. Schwartz says CAT scans can reveal certain heart issues, especially if you have never been diagnosed before.